Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is...
I'm Breck McGough.
Thank you for saying your last name out loud, because many people will be like, McGough.
I get called everything.
So, kind of my usual first question. How do we know each other?
So you and I did some undergraduate classes together. We were in choir together at UCO for a semester before you went off and did your production
ACM
degree.
World,
Yeah. And then now we're both graduate composition students at UCO, and we're in Power Cycle, the electronic ensemble at UCO.
Fresh,
brand new.
So, first of all, what do you do? Who are you? What sort of...
So, yeah. I'm in like a big transition right now. So I had been working as a library manager, and trying to do composition very part-time and get my degree, and finding that more and more difficult all the time because work was requiring a lot more time and energy. And so then it was getting home at the end of the day and being exhausted and be like, oh yeah, I have all these pieces I have to write. So anyway, I made the decision with my wife, and she's very supportive of my music, to go to school full time, take a couple of part-time jobs, that are much less constrictive,
right?
And so I'm currently working as one of the musicians at the Cathedral of Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Oklahoma City, and then
beautiful cathedral.
Oh yeah, it's a great place for singing, which is what I lead the congregational singing there, and I'm a soloist, and it's amazing. And then I also am a graduate research assistant for Dr. Tess here at UCO.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So which of these many things is your primary focus, I guess?
My focus, and this is also fairly new. I was thinking of double majoring in vocal performance and composition because I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. Right. I really enjoyed both.
Yeah.
And not that I think in the long run you have to only ever be one thing,
sure,
but there is only so much time, so kind of where do you spend the limited time you have? And so actually just this weekend I kind of been just trying to really focus over the last week on the things that I got the most pleasure out of, and the things that I felt the most energized even after doing for a long time. And it's just trying to be mindful of that, and it's always been composition. I finished a piece for there's a great another podcast called Red Hand Roleplay, and they're playing a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and so they needed theme music, and so I spent whoa,
yeah, okay.
Oh, we got some piano coming from the other room.
That's fine.
But I spent the weekend writing that, and at the end of it I was just like, oh, this was like some of the most fun I've had, even though I spent like 48 hours almost straight with very little sleep, right. It was like crunch time and it was due, and but it was really fun.
Are you happy with it?
Oh yeah, I think it's really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of, it's funny because here in our composition program, they don't teach us scoring.
Right.
Like there is a film scoring class that you can take at ACM.
Right. Exactly. Right.
But that, like, nowadays it's like if you're doing composition, like that's probably one of the main sources of income for most composers.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the things I've written have been for projects like that, or like independent films, and shorts. I've done a lot of short films that I've scored, and that's been, if I actually made a list of every single thing I've written, that would be most of it.
Yeah. So what are you wanting to, like, what is your goal, I guess?
Well, if like the perfect world where everything worked out and
Sure.
was exactly, I would probably continue my studies at the doctoral level. There's just a lot I still want to learn, and I love the academic setting.
Yeah.
But in like a perfect world, I would just be a freelance composer and just compose all day long. But I probably will have to, teach a little bit and compose and do a little this and that, or probably keep doing, like a church job or something like that, and, to make a living.
Yeah. And that is kind of the reality of being composers, is that, a lot of our stuff doesn't actually involve composing.
Right. It's true. And all the stuff we use for composing costs money. And yet the composing itself isn't a lot of times where we make our main income.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, no, it really is. This is what I do. Everything else is just to keep myself fed.
Right. So, how did you get started in music in general, I guess? And then we'll sort of track down the other rabbits.
Yeah. So I don't remember not doing music. I grew up, my mom was studying at her graduate degree at UT in opera performance, and she had already had a few professional gigs, and she still is a great mezzo soprano. My dad sang his whole life, has a great lyric tenor voice, and so I grew up singing in churches. There's like a video of me like way too young, like singing on stage, and I was just very natural, like as a toddler, like, but then I took piano lessons starting in the age of 7. My grandma played piano and taught me how to read music.
Cool.
And then my aunt she had started out as a concert pianist, then became a missionary and lived in Africa for a long time, and then came back to our little small town in southeast Oklahoma and taught me piano lessons regularly. And so then I did that in high school. I started taking voice lessons and started college at the beginning as a vocal performance major. But in high school, I got the composition bug and started it was kind of around the same time that I started learning piano. I would, my mom would hear me practicing all the time and then found out from my aunt that I was actually just playing my own stuff, and I wasn't actually learning
just noodling around.
Yeah, and I wasn't learning the repertoire that I was supposed to be learning. I was just making my own music. So my senior year, I actually got to take some of my own piano pieces to contest, which was really cool because my piano teacher at the time was really supportive of that, and so that was really fun.
Yeah. So what made you kind of, whenever you hit college and go, I have to decide a career, what made you go music? That seems like a good idea.
Yeah. And and kind of story of my life has been a bunch of changes. So I changed majors 5 times in my undergraduate and ended up
do that.
Yeah. And I ended up with a degree in humanities.
Cool.
And because I really did like the humanities. I liked learning about art and history and reading all of the great literature.
Sable has a humanities degree.
Oh,
as well.
Yeah. And it's great. And the faculty was great. And so I really enjoyed that. That's where I really got into film scoring because some of my classmates wrote and directed shorts.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And so my output in music it skyrocketed because I was making all these short films all the time for them. And so that was really great. I got to go to some national and some of the films made it into international festivals. And so that was really neat. But still I was like, well, I can't do music as a career and I can't be a composer. So I actually went to law school.
Cool.
After undergraduate and did that for exactly 1 year and was like, this was a terrible mistake. And so while at law school, I joined a professional choir and the same summer, I had the opportunity to go to Italy and tour with this choir. And also to go to Italy. I was doing international law at the time, and I had the opportunity to go to Italy and do an internship with this doing international law.
Cool.
And that was where it was like obvious that I really just needed to be doing music. That was what I wanted to do. I had two really cool opportunities, and that was kind of a pretty easy decision to make and go, okay. And so that's when it's obvious that I need to be doing, I'll never feel fulfilled if I'm not working as a musician.
Yeah. What was law school like?
I met some of the best people and some really great lawyers who were doing really interesting things with immigration policy, who were really one of my favorite experiences. I joined a team called Justice Bus, and we were in California, is where my school was, and we would actually on certain weekends they would bus law school students out, and we would help people with certain legal matters. We would have an attorney with us that would actually be there, but we were helping facilitate. And so one of the programs I was doing was criminal expungements. So people that had really small like crimes on their record. So when they went to apply for a job and it's like, have you been, have you had a felony or you've had this?
Sure.
They would have to check that. Yeah. And then what is the likelihood that they're going to get that job at that point? And so a lot of times it was things like, petty theft, marijuana. Right. And so then it's like forever associated with them. And so with the expungement, we could show, okay, they don't have a repeated history of offenses. They've been keeping a steady job. They're doing these things. Yeah. So, and so it would get to where they wouldn't have to, that would be removed from their record. So it would really help get them a leg up. Yeah. For people that were really trying to lead a productive life. Yeah. So I loved some of the stuff I was doing, and the rigor of it was a lot of fun for me. I really liked, I was in a mock trial, which I really enjoyed because it was like being an opera, because you were definitely just putting on a performance. Yeah. But still nothing like music. I mean, it's just, the people that are great at it, it is an art form. I mean, like some of the people I met had beautiful minds and were very creative and wonderful, but I always just missed doing music.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's no like actual like Venn diagram of law and music. It's just kind of...
It's just like, oh, this was a left turn. Right. And it was like, but but now when I say, oh yeah, I really want to do this, I actually know that more than I would have before, because I have tried the other thing that I'd always wondered, like, oh yeah, I like letters, and I really liked that part of the humanities, and I loved my philosophy classes, and I thought, well, I could be an attorney, and I'm very passionate about social justice, and so it seemed like a natural thing for me, but yeah.
So then kind of a broader philosophical question, but like, what makes music important?
Man, that's really, one thing that I've always found true is that, and it's true of all the arts, but I think catharsis is something really important. Yeah. And I think people don't realize how important it is. Yeah. But that's when people go to concerts. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what kind of concert it is. But if it's music they like, right? If it's their jam, and they go to a concert, they're going they may not realize it. They're thinking, oh, I'm going because I love this great song, or I love this band and they're great and I'm going to have this great time. But when they go there and they hear that great song and see those performers that they like, and they're dancing or they're shouting, or maybe it's more subdued and they're going because they love, Dvorak's opera Rusalka. So it's a more subdued setting, but something, and they sit there and gently just cry in silence, because you can't talk or shout at the opera. Right. But whatever it is, whatever their jam is, that's to have that emotional release. is so important.
Yeah.
I think spiritually and psychologically, because I don't know, and to have that sense of wonder that I think the arts provide too. And the great thing about music that's different from the other art forms is that it hits you directly.
Yeah.
And there is the intellectual component of music. But you don't have to know all the inner workings of music to enjoy a piece of music. You can know absolutely nothing about scales and chords.
Yeah.
And still, when you hear the combination of them in a really wonderful way, they can speak to you. And then you have this like aha moment where you're like, oh man, I just feel so at peace with everything.
Self-forgetting at oneness.
Yeah, self-forgetting at oneness. I didn't even want to say it. But yeah, I mean, but that's definitely true.
Yes.
And I think it can happen with everything, no matter what you're listening to.
That is a joke from one of the classes that we're in. You're not missing out on anything. It's like, whoa, is that a reference to something? So what is that music for you?
Man, that's tough. I really got into 20th century and 21st century classical music in high school, but not in the way that my first theory teacher would have liked. I wasn't super into Webern.
Right.
And dodecaphonic music, especially Pierre Boulez, who I still think is just, well, I won't. There may be Pierre Boulez, and if that's your jam, go for it. But
yes. Can that be someone's jam?
He would probably be so mad that someone thought it was their jam that he would like find.
You're not supposed to like this.
It's like, this isn't to
you
be
can't
liked.
just hum this.
Right, exactly. But I remember listening to Philip Glass's Glassworks for the first time and just being like, oh, this is totally different than anything else I've ever heard. Yeah. And so beautiful. And so, yeah, I went into the deep end with minimalism in high school, particularly with Philip Glass, Terry Riley.
Yeah.
Arvo Pärt is maybe my favorite living composer. It changes because then I'll hear a piece from another composer I like. I'm like, oh no, that's the one I like.
Yeah.
And so when I I can even a piece of Pärt's like Berliner Messe or his vocal piece Summa. Well, I think the vocal version is called Credo. There's a string version called Summa, but I've heard those like millions of times. And if they're on, it's just like, I don't know. It's this most amazing music that it's otherworldly. It totally removes you from, I don't know. And it's not, it's not always the thing you want to hear.
Right.
You're not going to have a dinner party and you're like, all right, everybody. It's like, this can't be background music, so no one talks for 2 hours. We're just going to listen to a bunch of Arvo Pärt.
Right. Although Arvo Pärt does make some pretty good background music.
Yeah, it does. It does. No, it is. I just love it so much. I can't let it be background. Yeah. I'll be like, shut up. Shh. No, this part right here.
No, this part. Yeah.
And so recently, I discovered the music of Kaya Saryaho, and she wrote L'amour de loin, and they did it at the Met, I think 2 years ago now. And so I got an interlibrary loan of the original production, and after it was after the end of that opera, and I used to be really into opera and loved all the all the Verdi and Puccini and all that stuff. And then I kind of haven't been so into it because it's so dramatic. It's so overwrought, And so I like more subtle expressions. Sure. But still watching this and after it was over, I just had to like sit in silence for about at least an hour. Dang. And I just sat there and I was crying off and on because it was just incredible to see something so new and fresh. I don't know. It was just it's an amazing, she's an amazing composer and is totally doing her own thing. She's not, you can listen, you're like, oh, they're trying to sound
this is like,
this is like this. And that's, I don't know what that is for her. It's, which is really inspiring to have people like that. So those are that's what I listen to.
Yeah. Has learning more about music and how to compose and scales and theory and that, has that taken the magic out in some sense?
There have been times in the middle of it where yes, because in that moment when I'm stressed about this has to be this way and this, or if I'm working on, like, for instance, a counterpoint project where that's the point of that.
Yeah.
But when you actually listen to a piece, the magic is always there.
Yeah.
If the piece,
you're not paying attention to, like,
I'm not. Yeah.
thirds, fifths.
Right. Yeah. And I had my first theory teacher when I was at Southeastern was, he did do that when he listened to music. He was just analyzing constantly.
Yeah.
He had perfect pitch, and he would just,
that's a curse.
Yeah. And he always said that. So it was hard for him because, especially if a piece was really simple, because then he was like, I get it. So he couldn't, like, appreciate, more simple music, which sometimes I feel like getting to the core of the matter in a piece is more beautiful than a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
Unless the complexity is necessary for the piece, but complexity for complexity's sake sometimes can take the magic out too. Cause it's like, well, there's a piece in there somewhere if we get rid of all of this.
Or then you just start sounding like Milton Babbitt. And it's just the sound of math.
Yeah. Oh, Babbitt.
Yeah.
Well,
it's still interesting to analyze, but that's about it.
It is. And there's a lot of pieces like that where it's like, oh, this is neat.
Yeah.
On paper as a homework assignment.
Yes.
But, I'm not going to invite my friends to a concert. Like, yeah, we're just
that's also not something that you can put on in the background.
Right.
Because it's like, what is going on? What is this nonsense that you have that you think is like, oh, this is good ambient music?
Right, exactly. Right. No,
But I mean, yeah, it is good to, and that's what a lot of people think too, that I've talked to too, is that like, oh, like, all the magic is gone because you can just, especially with contemporary music too.
Right.
What is your sort of leaning into contemporary music? What do you think of the sort of gap that lies in between sort of like classical concert music and like contemporary, like rock or pop or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's more of a social construct.
Yeah.
To me, I feel like music is music.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's definitely styles. So, if somebody's doing jazz and they're doing it in a jazz style, right? So like there's styles of music, but I feel like the whole, like, this is art music and this is not, I think comes down more to, for me, would be individual pieces or songs.
Yeah.
Not so much a genre or a style in and of itself.
Right.
Because there have been pieces, by Radiohead or Bjork that I've listened to, and I said pieces, not even thinking they're songs, but I feel like they're beautiful compositions that can stand up next to other beautiful compositions in more of a classical style.
Definitely.
And no one can tell me that Nina Simone wasn't one of the greatest artists of the 20th century, because she did jazz but she didn't do, opera or she wasn't a real concert pianist. She did jazz piano.
Right.
But, anyway, but yeah, I feel like it's, and it's it's really bad in America too, especially.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that classical music in America, we were trying to prove that we were really cultured, like Western Europe,
right?
Because we were a new country, and I think that's still part of it too. Where it's like, because in America, I mean, the classical music is still so very 19th century and whereas in Europe, when they're putting on a lot of more contemporary productions and doing things where, you know, it's that line between what's pop and classical is a little more vague. I actually watched a documentary on Penderecki, and they had what's the guitarist from Radiohead?
Johnny Greenwood.
Yeah, Johnny Greenwood. So they were in Poland, and they were doing a concert of music by Johnny Greenwood.
Yeah.
And music by Penderecki. And they did like Trinity on the Victims of Hiroshima. And but it was like the venue was a rock concert. Like people were standing up and screaming, and Penderecki comes out to the podium and people are like, ah. And really it was just like, what? That's really cool. Like that doesn't happen. That's not, we don't have a thing like that where you could even put on and have thousands of people come. I mean, that's just like that's really neat.
Well, I'm sure more so for like Johnny Greenwood, obviously.
Yeah,
but like,
sure.
He is a rock star.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But like also, to me, one of the best film composers that's working.
Really.
The Phantom Thread, the score for that movie.
I've been meaning to watch it, but yeah.
It was robbed of an Oscar. No, it didn't win because No. But yeah, it was nominated. But I think that's even part of that kind of thing where he's not a real film composer. Sure. He's a rocker that dabbles.
He's in Radiohead.
Yeah, exactly. And then but this score is like Debussy and Ravel. I mean, but not. I mean, it's his own style. It's just, but it's amazing music.
And I mean, what I have seen is like There Will Be Blood.
Right. Oh yeah. Like what score can you even compare that to?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. No, I love that.
But I am glad that like, I mean, at least now we're trying to sort of blur that line, at least with what we're doing in Power Cycle. So I guess in your own words, try and describe what Power Cycle is.
So Power Cycle is an electronic ensemble made up of 3 graduate student composers, who come from very different backgrounds and approaches to composition. But it's almost, I never kind of thought about this till right now. Right. It's almost like a chord. You have these 3, at least 3 pitches that then become its own thing. And I kind of think of us that way, 3 very different sounds that become a one sound. And so it, I mean, it's an experimental group. It's the first of its kind here, where we're kind of making the rules as we go along and putting concerts together as we go along.
Yeah. No, and I wanted to at least like plug that a little bit.
Yes.
This is
October 8th.
Yeah.
Come see us at the Jazz Lab.
Yeah. Because that'll be fun and freaky and weird. So.
Yes. The pizza service will be impeccable.
Yes, there is also free pizza. What is bad music?
Ooh. I don't know.
Yeah.
That one is harder for me to answer than like what is good music almost. And I think, to me, I would think the only thing that maybe I would think was bad is something that somebody didn't care about when they made it.
Sure.
But like so much, there's so much subjectivity to what's good and bad.
Yeah.
My mom, for instance, has really good taste, and even really like some modern composers that I like, abhors anything Bjork's ever done. Like it just like sounds like nails on chalkboard to her, and it's like, and I know she has good taste, and I know she knows good music, and she knows how music works, but I think so much of it comes down to just personal preference and your own life experience and what sounds you enjoy. But yeah, I would just think, if someone's really putting their heart and soul into something and it really means something to them and they make it, maybe I don't like it aesthetically, like the sounds themselves I don't like, or the combination of things, but I still wouldn't call that bad music because somebody did something and put something out there and believed in it. But I would say if somebody's like, you know, oh, I gotta just do this and I don't care about it at all, and you know, then maybe that's bad.
Right.
But yeah, it just feels like a hard.
But we also kind of do that through, I mean, maybe you have to score something and it's just like, let me just crank this thing out.
I know.
Or like counterpoint assignments that it's just like, all right, let me just
no, and I
throw
mean,
notes on a page here.
Yeah, and I mean, I you know, just personally, I would say those are my bad pieces.
Right.
You know, if I'm looking at like, oh, you know, what are some things you've written? It's like, I'm not going to show you those.
Right.
Those ones that I was like, oh yeah, I had a lesson that day and this had to be finished. Or, you know, this was due at X time. And so it was just, I turned it in an hour before it was due and they put it on this thing. And now luckily, that hasn't happened very often. So even with short deadlines like this weekend or with shorts, sometimes that can be, you know, we're submitting this for this festival. Music is the last thing to go on.
Right.
They've done everything else first. And it's like, oh, it's tomorrow. We're turning it in. Can you get us a score? And it's like, nah, sure. But usually because you love music itself and you love the act of composing and coming up with new ideas. And there's an aspect of it that's like a puzzle. So intellectually it's fun. It's almost like solving a mystery. Because this has to happen. This needs to happen. How do I get both of these things to happen and it be coherent? And and there's so much of that to it that's enjoyable in itself. So most of the time, even it's still enjoyable and it's still, I feel like I'm putting myself into it. But yeah, I would say there have been a couple of times where I'm like, that's not a good piece of music and I don't want my name on it.
And that is actually something else I was going to ask about. Is like, there's a lot of times when music feels like math. And I guess that kind of circles around the whole, like, taking the magic out of it. And that, like, there is a process, or there are scales, there are puzzle pieces to sort of put into place. But you think you have to be like a little bit math brained to be a composer?
I don't know. I've thought about this a lot because the math for me comes in later in the composition. So the initial thought is always
like humming a melody to yourself or something.
For me, you know, and I think because I'm a vocalist, it's either like something that comes to mind or that I sing, or it's something that I find on the piano. Sometimes, especially when writing for piano, my fingers kind of find where they would like to go. And so that can be the basis for something. But there is almost like this weird, like, sacred mystery to the process. But the only time I've sat down and mathed a piece from start to finish probably was in counterpoint class. But you know, there's always, you know, what my goal is, and I guess this doesn't just relate to certain kinds of pieces, it's kind of everything, but there needs to be something interesting. And that can be defined however. Hopefully something beautiful, defined however you'd want. And something sexy about it, where it's like, oh, I like, you know, where you kind of have this attraction to the piece itself, where one thing, the one that we did of yours that had the bass line that was so groovy.
Mirage.
I mean, that's such a sexy little thing right there. It's like, yeah, okay, throwing it down. I just, and that like got stuck in my head forever. But yeah, and so, you know, the math part of it is, okay, this is orchestrated for these instruments. They have these ranges. This needs to go like this. And this one is, or if you're looking at the chords themselves and how to spell everything and get it spaced out the right way. You know, but
voice leading.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, one of the nice things about where we are in music right now is that even more so, I would say, in classical music than in any other type of music, is that it's really a blank canvas.
Yeah.
And if you make it work, or you make it cohesive,
Sure.
I mean, it's like, wow, that didn't go where I expected it. And had you done it the right way, according to music theory,
wouldn't have happened.
that moment wouldn't have happened, and it would have been more boring and standard. And so that's kind of exciting, I think. So the math part to me is very not much a part of my process. Just because of that. I think if I were writing in the 19th century, it would have to be a lot bigger part of it. But now I'm like, I'll make it however I want.
Right. One last thing on this topic, and then we'll switch gears. I guess not necessarily to just like crap all over your education, but what is something that you feel is lacking in this higher education of music?
Sure. I would say, and you probably feel this way too. Most of my education on newer music has been on my own.
Yeah.
And my exposure to it has been on my own.
Sure.
And so, while I think it's great that there is such a rich tradition in Western classical music, I wish that we could spend more time on world music, on music of different styles and genre, music that's being written today.
Yeah.
Listen to music of active composers right now. What are they writing? And analyze those pieces.
Yeah.
Because with the music I'm writing right now, I mean, I'm glad I know how to analyze a Bach fugue.
Right.
But there's a lot of music right now that's being made that it'd be great to analyze it. And there are courses out there for it and books. Right. It's not like it's inaccessible, but it's just not part of the focus, I think, of academic music.
Yeah. And I guess what's something that we could do to sort of encourage that?
Yeah. I mean, I just think, I don't know, I have a class just dedicated to that, or have a
play it.
I mean, put more of it in concerts, and some of the ensembles do a lot better job. Like being in choir, you do modern composers all the time, and a lot of living composers when you're in choir, and I guess it's the same way in wind band.
Eric Whitaker is the rock star of choir.
Oh man. Oh, gosh. It's the hair. It's the hair.
It really is the hair.
That's all it is. It's a secret. But symphony orchestras put on a lot of. They're doing Brahms.
Yeah.
And when they venture out, they're like, oh, we'll do Stravinsky. It's like that's over 100 years old. So.
All right. Well, switching gears. Because I don't have a good segue for it. Anyways, what is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
Again, I'm in a really fluxy time right now. That's a word, right? I can say that. So it's kind of a long answer. I hope that's okay.
Go for it.
So I grew up Pentecostal. That's how I was raised. And Assemblies of God specifically was the denomination. In a very small town in southeast Oklahoma, we had about 300 people. And there's a lot of that, like being raised in a denomination like that. It was very fundamentalist, very evangelical. There's a lot that was negative about it that as I got older, was really turned off by. And there was a lot of judgment about things that were different. And a lot of rules, and I don't know. And so as I got older, I went away from that, and became agnostic and felt like there was a spiritual life, but but didn't really quite have the answers. And then for the last 7 or 8 years, have been an atheist until last spring. And so it's been really weird.
Cool.
And luckily I've very understanding friends. I was really worried about talking to anyone other than my wife, and I was actually worried to talk to her about it because for our entire relationship, that had not even been part of my my thing. And so I'd always had church jobs, even though I wasn't religious.
And if they are a good church, they will hire anyone because
they need good musicians. And how a mass is. There's lots of singing, and there's at the cathedral, there's lots of specific things that you have to sing and the way you have to do them, and all this stuff. And so it's so that part was always fun because it was like a real performance. But so I had been going to a Universalist Unitarian church, and that had just been because I hadn't been anywhere in so long. And I'm very I get a lot from interactions with other people. And so the bad part about being an atheist is, where do you just get together with strangers in a big setting and just like meet random people and other than like concerts and things like that. But it's a little, like, where do you just get together with strangers and just sing a song together or, listen to readings and those sorts of things. So I was really there. I found a really cool congregation. And, they read everything from Henry David Thoreau to, Mahatma Gandhi, they just kind of, everything. And I really liked it. But it kind of was like the gateway drug to go there for me because, sorry, I had an ant on my arm.
No, you're fine.
And so, I had worked at the cathedral previously, and then got my job at the library, so I didn't need to have the extra jobs.
Sure.
And I was happy to go because I was like, I'm not getting anything out of this. This is just a paycheck. So last year, last spring, up before Easter, for all the Lent and Holy Week services, right before Lent, their tenor quit. And their soloist, and so they weren't going to be able to do some of the pieces that they had already been rehearsing. The cantor schedule was all thrown up, and so I got contacted, and like, would it be possible for you to just come back and fill in? And I was now back in graduate school and working a crazy job as a manager, and was like, and for some reason I was like, I'll do that. That sounds fine. I have no free time. What's one more thing?
You should never say no in the music business.
Right. You just never know. And so I went, same songs, same people, same everything else. I have no idea. But this time I was just so moved by the whole experience of the mass. And so anyway, on Easter Sunday, I talked with my wife and said, I want to join the church. And she is Catholic, but has been kind of like culturally Catholic, and so hasn't been like, super. And so, she was a little bit like, okay, but because it was a little unexpected. And then I had to talk to my parents, about it and everything. And so then it was kind of like slowly filling people in because it just hadn't been part of who I was. And then to have the experience of like growing up Protestant and evangelical. And then like, I don't know,
going the opposite direction.
It's just been weird. And it's like a lot of things. It's like, you can't really explain it into like, in particular, like why I felt like at that time I was like, no, this is the right decision to make. But so that's been I've been on a weird,
no, that's really interesting
kind of thing. So this is still fairly new. So,
well, it's kind of interesting because you're like on the opposite side of like where I am.
Okay.
We just talked about it. So like you sort of flipped my story in that it's like, oh yeah, I was like, atheist for a long time and then became religious. And I'm
Right.
like, I was very religious for a long time, then became atheist. So like it's and does it go the same way? Is it like, do your friends have to like know this about you now? Is that like,
I don't know. Because I thought about just never telling them. But I love my friends, and I didn't want them to just know part of my life.
Sure.
So I wanted to, tell them, and some of them the entire time they've known me, I haven't been religious at all, and have been opposed to most religious things actively. And so it was kind of, it was scary. It was, I was really stressed out to even like talk to some of them about it.
Yeah.
And the responses I got were great, because it was like, well, you're wrong, but you're still my friend, was kind of their response. And I was like, that's all I want. Like, I don't care. You don't ever have to like support me at all in this, but just know it about me. And, so because I want people to know the full, close friends and family to know the full picture. But
what sort of, how have you grown in that regard, in that now that you've become more spiritually involved, how has like your behavior changed? How do you treat other people?
I think and this sounds so like some of the stuff is so simple, because it's like, duh, why did that, it's so much is timing too. But one of the songs we were singing for Easter was talking about seeing the face of God and the people on either side of you. And that probably more than anything else kind of bowled me over. And then I kind of realized that the whole thing is about love. And, and specifically with Christianity, which I'll put a tack in that, but, but, even like to the crucifixion and everything, and this whole thing of laying one's life down is the whole gospel according to Jesus. It's all about love your neighbor as yourself is the whole thing. And when that sounds so simple, right? But when you try to act in that way, it's really profound. And it's been it has changed the way, I don't know if it's because I've always tried to be a loving person, and that's all. I'm naturally more huggy and lovey. But I've been more consciously aware of when I'm with people to really give them my attention and to spend time with them in a meaningful way and in a mindful way, and to do things for them, and be more available and more present. That's been a big thing. It's been a huge thing to start praying again, because that was so not part of, my life for a long time, probably about 10 years that I just hadn't even like prayed. So that was interesting to start that again. And so that's now part of my morning routine, is to start the day. I read the daily readings, and then do a prayer, which is a combination of more like the traditional petitionary prayers, and then a lot of sitting in silence, and something more closely attuned to meditation. But I have felt a lot, just things I've noticed about myself as a musician and as a professional. I've noticed a lot less anxiety about performance, about the compositional process. I would get so afraid of not doing well on a piece, I wouldn't even start one, so it was just hard to even work on it. And so I have noticed that has been a lot different, and I've been more active composing in it as a musician.
That's really cool. I guess a couple more questions that are a few more, some straightforward ones. What is your definition of God?
I think for me, God is the ultimate mystery to the universe and is the ultimate answer to why we love. And, but at the same time is very personal.
Yeah.
And I think it's both and. I think unknowable and indefinable.
Yeah.
But I think but also present, which is really kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But it's a personal unknowable.
Yeah. No, I like that. And then free will ? I haven't found a better way of asking that question.
No, that's a good one.
Question mark.
Do I have to answer this question? I'm kidding.
Were you going to anyways?
Yeah, see, I know. Yeah, free will. Yeah, to me, it's always been part of my personal outlook is that free will exists. I have friends who are philosophers who can do a very good job arguing that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I cannot compete with them in my philosophical rigor.
Sure.
But at the end of it, I still say I'm right. And I think the profound experience of love and of wonder at love or acts of kindness that you receive, or when people do things selflessly for you, if there weren't free will, then that act wouldn't be miraculous in any way. It would just be, oh, well, they have to do that because, so, which in itself isn't an argument. It's just saying, well, that would be a shame. So for me, free will makes more sense.
Sure.
But I do know that the sophists among us can argue both sides pretty well and come to good conclusions.
2 more questions.
Sure.
I'm trying to be mindful of your time.
Oh, and if we it's we're good.
So what advice do you have for people?
Wow, I don't even feel
nobody's qualified
to give advice. I would say if I could talk to myself, I would have said to be more accepting of people at an earlier age than I was. And I think when I was an atheist, could be pretty unaccepting of people who were devoutly religious, because I saw them all as, small-minded simpletons who were, not trying to figure anything out because they had all the answers that they needed.
Sure.
And so I think, like we've talked a little bit about, and I think you definitely agree with this, is that love is so foundational with everything. And if we can really focus on that and focus on what that really means. Yeah. And, because I know people who have been personally hurt by people in the Catholic Church. And so I think that even institutions like that and other denominations don't always practice that themselves. Yeah. And so I don't think that all the answers are in one place, and realizing that the people running the show are still human beings. Yeah. But for better or worse, but if love is the focus with everything you're doing, with your career, when you're at work, when you're whatever you're doing, I think that you'll have a more beautiful life. And it may not go the way that you expected it to go. but it will be infinitely more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. Lastly, probably the hardest question
Oh
here.
no.
Cake or pie?
Oh, this one is so easy. Oh my gosh. Pie, 100%. So, sorry, I have a little story.
Go for it.
So when I was getting married, you know, it was a big thing to pick out the groom's cake. And so I knew, I was like, if I'm getting married and we're having like a ceremony, there's not going to be a groom's cake. So we had an assortment of pies on the groom's side. And so my favorite pie is a southern raisin pie.
Interesting.
And it's a really interesting pie. After the raisins have been soaked and then baked, it becomes this really gooey wonderfulness that's inside, and it's a really great pie. But yeah, pie.
I'm trying to believe you because raisins usually ruin everything.
Yeah, it's like music. It's one of those things. The most beautiful pie to me is just, you know, inedible to someone else.
But no, yes. I'm also pie. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, well, we can still be friends.
Yeah. Atheist, Catholic, whatever.
Whatever. We'll make it work over pie.
Right. But like pie at least. Okay.
Yeah, we got that. We got that
down. Breck, thank you for doing this with me.
Absolutely. This was fun.
Where can we find you and your things?
You can find me at I have a SoundCloud. It's probably the best way to find my music because I try to keep it updated. I have a website that will take you to my SoundCloud page. It's just my name, breckmcgough.com.
Yep. It's the best way to do it.
And it's don't look at my webpage. Just listen to my music because it's terrible. Not my music, the page.
Right. No, your music isn't terrible.
I'm a good salesperson. You can tell.
Well, thank you for doing this with me and for spending the time to
Absolutely. No, I love this.
Yeah. Once again, I'm Santiago Ramones.
I'm Breck McGough.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. There is music. There is this podcast, which you can listen to on iTunes or your Apple Podcasts, the app that you have on your phone that no one ever opens, but it's there. If you don't already listen to podcasts, that is.
Right.
So it's also on YouTube and on Stitcher if you listen through that. I guess whoever listens through Android can listen through Stitcher. On all of those things, you can leave reviews and comments and let me know and be like, I think Breck is awesome, or I think Santiago is stupid for not liking raisin pie. So say whatever you want on the things. I like knowing who is listening. And then also is my music, which there is some SoundCloud stuff, and there is also a demo of music, which is a Songs with Words demo. Which you can pay zero money for, or you can pay however many monies for. And you can, support me in that way. It's weird having a sort of digital tip jar that, like, if Bill Gates would come around at some point and just be like, oh, I like this guy. Here's $1 million.
Yeah.
That would,
We can build the Institute for Modern Music.
Not with $1 million.
Oh, yeah, totally not.
Yeah, that's $1 million is chump change for educational
That's
institutions.
True. You're so right. You're so right.
I always on my podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong.
God gave us memory. So that we